My rich uncle found out I was living in my car while working two jobs to pay for college, and my cousins were making fun of me to everyone. Now he's flipping the script. Hey Reddit, never thought I'd be posting this, but here we are. This story's been eating at me for months, and I need to get it out. Fair warning, it's long, it's messy, and it involves family being absolute garbage humans. But stick with me because the ending, chef's kiss. I'm Guadalupe, 23, female, and until about 6 months ago, I was living in my car while working two jobs and trying to finish my engineering degree. Yeah, you read that right. Living in my car. Not because I was on some minimalist journey or trying to be trendy, because I literally had no other choice. But let me back up and give you the full picture of how spectacularly dysfunctional my family is. My dad bounced when I was 8, just straight up left one day for cigarettes and never came back. Classic deadbeat dad story. Mom did her best raising me and my younger sister Tasha alone, but money was always tight. She worked as a nurse's aide at a care facility, pulling doubles whenever she could, but it barely covered rent and food. We lived in this cramped two-bedroom apartment in a rough part of town where gunshots at night were basically white noise. Meanwhile, my dad's brother, Uncle James, was living large, and I mean large. Dude made a fortune in commercial real estate back in the 90s and never looked back. McMansion in the suburbs, 3 luxury cars, annual vacations to Europe. His wife, Aunt Patricia, was one of those women who spent her days at the country club and her nights at charity galas, pretending she cared about the poor while looking down on anyone who actually was poor. They had 2 kids, Blake, 25, male, and Madison, 22, female. My cousins, the golden children who'd never worked a day in their lives but somehow thought they were better than everyone else because their last name came with a trust fund. Here's the thing about rich relatives. They love to talk about family and helping each other out. But the second you actually need help, suddenly it's all about personal responsibility and not enabling bad choices. Growing up, Uncle James would show up to family gatherings in his Mercedes, give us these patronizing pats on the head, and lecture my mom about budgeting while his kids wore designer clothes and complained about their iPhones being last year's model. Blake went to an Ivy League school, full ride, courtesy of Dad's connections and massive donations, graduated with a degree in something useless like philosophy, then got handed a cushy job at one of Uncle James's companies where his main responsibility seemed to be playing golf with clients and posting LinkedIn thought leadership about disruption and innovation. Madison went to a private liberal arts college, changed her major 4 times, and was currently taking time to find herself, which translated to posting Instagram photos from Bali and Tulum on her parents' dime while calling it her journey of self-discovery. As for me, I busted my ass in high school, got solid grades despite working part-time at a grocery store, and got into the State University for Mechanical Engineering. No fancy scholarships, no family connections, just student loans and determination. Mom helped when she could, but most months she was choosing between keeping the lights on or buying groceries. So I wasn't about to ask her for tuition money. When I started college, I was living in the dorms, working at a campus coffee shop, and barely scraping by. Then sophomore year hit and everything fell apart. Mom got diagnosed with breast cancer, stage 2. The medical bills started piling up immediately, even with insurance. She had to cut back her hours for treatment, which meant less income. I tried to help with what I could from my coffee shop wages, but it wasn't enough. That's when I had to make the choice. Keep living in the dorms and watch my mom drown in debt, or drop out of housing and find something cheaper. The problem was, even the crappiest apartments in the area were $800 a month minimum, and that was before utilities and food. I was already taking out maximum student loans for tuition. There was nothing left. So, I did what I had to do. I moved into my car. At first, I told myself it was temporary, just until Mom got through treatment and could work full-time again. Just until I could save up enough for a deposit on a place. But temporary became 6 months, then a year, then here I am at 2 years and counting. Living in a car isn't like the movies make it seem. It's not some quirky adventure or character-building experience. It's grinding, degrading, and exhausting in ways that never really go away. My Civic became my entire world. I had a gym membership at Planet Fitness specifically for the showers. $10 a month was the best investment I ever made. I'd wake up at 5 o'clock a.m. in whatever parking lot I'd found the night before, usually behind a 24-hour Walmart or in the far corner of a shopping center, and my entire body would be stiff from sleeping curled up in the back seat. I kept a sleeping bag, a pillow, and some extra clothes back there. That was it. Everything else I owned fit in a backpack: textbooks, laptop, chargers, toiletries. The routine was brutal. Wake up before security or cops could hassle me about sleeping in my car, drive to Planet Fitness, shower, brush my teeth, try to look like a normal college student instead of someone who just spent the night in a vehicle, then head to campus for my 8 a.m. classes. Between classes, I'd work my first job at the coffee shop on campus, 4-hour shifts, 5 days a week, making minimum wage plus whatever tips students felt generous enough to leave. Most days, that was maybe $40 to $50 total, barely enough to cover gas and food. After my last class ended around 4 o'clock p.m., I'd grab something cheap from the campus food court, usually a $3 slice of pizza or a $5 burrito bowl that I could stretch into 2 meals. Then I'd hit the library to study and do homework until they closed at midnight because studying in my car meant running the battery down, and I couldn't afford to replace it. Once the library closed, I'd drive to my second job, overnight security guard at a storage facility, midnight to 6 o'clock a.m., 3 nights a week. The pay was slightly better at $12 an hour, and the best part was I could study during the shift since nothing ever really happened. I'd sit in the guard shack, keep an eye on the cameras, make my hourly rounds, and work on problem sets for my engineering classes. On nights I didn't have the security job, I'd find somewhere safe to park and crash for a few hours before starting the whole cycle again. Weekends were for catching up on sleep when I could, working extra shifts, and doing laundry at the laundromat. The hardest part wasn't the physical exhaustion, though. That was definitely brutal. It was the mental weight of constantly hiding what was happening, making sure no one from school saw where I slept, pretending everything was fine when classmates complained about their dorm roommates or argued about which off-campus apartment had the best amenities, watching them stress about papers and exams while I was stressed about where my next meal was coming from and whether my car would start in the morning. I kept my situation completely secret, told my roommate freshman year I was moving in with family when I really moved into my car, told my campus friends I was living off campus now, and kept interactions there instead of anywhere near where I was actually parking at night. The shame was crushing, even though logically I knew I hadn't done anything wrong. This was survival, but society tells you if you're homeless, even college-educated homeless, you must have screwed up somewhere. The worst moments were during winter. Michigan winters in a car are no joke. I'd run the heat for 20 minutes at a time, then turn it off to save gas, then turn it back on when I literally couldn't feel my fingers anymore. I'd wear 3 layers of clothes to bed, stuff newspaper around the windows for insulation, and still wake up shivering. More than once, I seriously considered just dropping out entirely. But the thought of wasting 2 years of work and loans for nothing kept me going. There were nights when I'd sit in that cold car, breath fogging up the windows, and wonder what Blake and Madison were doing. Probably sleeping in their comfortable beds, probably not worrying about anything more serious than what to wear tomorrow or which restaurant to try for dinner. The unfairness of it all would hit me like a physical weight on my chest. Through all of this, I avoided family gatherings like the plague. Couldn't risk anyone finding out. Couldn't handle the questions or the pity, or worse, the judgment. Mom knew things were tight for me, but I never told her the full extent. She had enough to worry about with her own health and finances. Every time she asked how I was doing, I'd give her the same answer. I'm managing, Mom. Don't worry about me. Which brings me to my cousins and how this whole situation exploded. Blake and Madison somehow found out about my living situation. To this day, I still don't know exactly how. Maybe they saw my car parked somewhere it shouldn't be. Maybe they heard something from a mutual acquaintance. Maybe they hired a private investigator because they were that bored and petty. But about 6 months ago, they found out. And instead of showing an ounce of human decency, they turned my tragedy into entertainment. It started with Blake. I hadn't seen him in over a year when I ran into him at a gas station near campus. I was filling up my Civic, trying to squeeze every dollar's worth out of the tank, when I heard this obnoxious voice behind me. "Guadalupe, Holy, is that you?" I turned around, and there he was. Designer jeans, expensive jacket, $100 haircut, standing next to his Audi like he owned the whole gas station. The contrast between us was stark. Him looking like he just stepped out of a GQ photo shoot, me in my worn jeans and faded hoodie that had seen better days. "Hey, Blake," I said, trying to sound casual. "How's it going?" "Can't complain. Just finished playing golf with some clients. You still doing the college thing?" The college thing, like it was some hobby I was dabbling in instead of the reason I was working myself into the ground. "Yeah, senior year now, engineering." That's cool. He looked at my car with this weird expression like he was putting pieces together. His eyes lingered on the sleeping bag visible in the back seat, the box of granola bars on the passenger seat, the stack of textbooks. "You living nearby around?" I said vaguely. "You know how it is." His eyes narrowed slightly, and I could see the gears turning in his head. "Right. Well, good seeing you. Stay warm out here." That last comment hit different. Stay warm, like he knew something, like he'd figured it out and was already planning how to use the information. 2 weeks later, Madison posted on Instagram. "I only found out because my friend Tyler showed me. I'd stopped following my cousins years ago." The post was a photo of her at some trendy brunch spot, mimosa in hand, designer sunglasses perched on her head, caption reading, "Sunday vibes. So grateful to come home to my cozy apartment after brunch and not, a parking lot. Hashtag blessed, hashtag gratitude, hashtag perspective." The comments were full of her friends asking what she meant. She'd responded to one. "Just thinking about people who make poor life choices. LOL. Can't relate. Sometimes you have to work smarter, not harder." Tyler showed me because he knew we were related. "Dude, your cousin's kind of a..." "Yeah," I said, staring at the screen. "She really is." But it got worse. So much worse. Apparently Blake and Madison started telling people at family gatherings. Cousins I barely knew. Aunts and uncles I only saw at weddings and funerals. They'd turned my situation into some kind of cautionary tale, spinning it like I was living in my car because I was irresponsible or lazy or made bad choices. Like working 2 jobs while maintaining a 3.7 GPA in one of the hardest majors was somehow evidence of failure. Like choosing to help my mom with cancer treatment instead of living comfortably was a character flaw. I found this out at my grandmother's birthday party 3 months ago. I almost didn't go, but Mom guilted me into it, and honestly, I missed Grandma. She'd always been kind to me growing up. When Dad left, she was the one who brought us groceries and slipped me $20 bills, telling me to buy something nice for myself. The party was at Uncle James's house. Naturally. Walking in there felt like entering a different dimension. Marble floors, crystal chandelier in the entryway, professionally catered food, the works. I showed up in my cleanest jeans and a button-down I'd found at Goodwill, trying to blend in with cousins wearing clothes that cost more than my monthly food budget. Blake and Madison were holding court in the living room, surrounded by younger cousins who looked at them like celebrities. I tried to slip past to find Grandma, but Madison spotted me. "Oh my God, Guadalupe," she called out loud enough for everyone to hear. "I almost didn't recognize you without your car." The room got quiet. People turned to look. I felt my face getting hot. "What's that supposed to mean?" I asked, keeping my voice level. "Nothing." "Nothing?" She waved her hand, that fake innocent smile on her face. "Just so proud of you for making it work. Living the minimalist lifestyle and all. Very trendy." Blake joined in, walking over with that same condescending smirk I'd seen at the gas station. "Yeah, really takes dedication. Most people couldn't handle sleeping in a Civic for 2 years now? That's commitment to the grind." My stomach dropped. They were really doing this in front of everyone, making a public spectacle of my private hell. "At least I'm paying my own way through school," I said quietly. Madison laughed, that high-pitched fake laugh that made my skin crawl. "Paying your way with what? The coffee shop salary? Blake, didn't you say you saw her working security overnight? That's so entrepreneurial, a real hustler." Super entrepreneurial, Blake agreed, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Really pulling herself up by those bootstraps. Very inspiring story. I felt everyone's eyes on me. Pity from some, curiosity from others, judgment from a few. My face burned with shame and anger. I opened my mouth to say something, anything, when a voice cut through the room like a knife. "What the hell did you just say?" Everyone turned. Uncle James was standing in the doorway leading from the kitchen, and his face was absolutely thunderous. I'd never seen him angry before. Disappointed, sure, distant, definitely, but never angry like this. His usually composed expression was completely shattered, replaced by something that looked like barely controlled rage. "Dad, we were just—" Madison started, her voice suddenly small. "I asked you a question." His voice was ice cold. "What did you just say to Guadalupe?" Blake tried to play it off, forcing a casual shrug. "We were just messing around, Dad. Lupe knows we're joking, right, Lupe?" "Joking?" Uncle James repeated the word like it tasted rotten. "You think it's funny that your cousin is working 2 jobs while living in her car to put herself through college?" The room went dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop on those marble floors. Aunt Patricia had appeared behind Uncle James, her face pale. "We didn't mean—" Madison tried again. "How long have you known?" Uncle James cut her off, still staring at them with that cold fury. His hands were clenched at his sides, shaking slightly. "A few months," Blake admitted reluctantly. "But Dad, it's not like—" "A few months." Uncle James's jaw clenched so hard I could see the muscle jumping. "You've known for months that your cousin was homeless, and you never thought to tell me. You never thought that maybe, just maybe, I'd want to know that my niece was sleeping in her car while you two were posting pictures from your vacation in Tulum." Madison's face went pale. She glanced at Blake, looking for backup, but he was staring at the floor. "We didn't think it was that big a deal. She seemed fine, like she had it under control." "She seemed fine." Uncle James looked at her like he'd never seen her before, like she was a complete stranger. "Your cousin has been living in a car for 2 years while you've been spending my money on brunch and yoga classes and Instagram-worthy vacations, and you didn't think it was a big deal." He turned to me then, and his expression shifted from anger to something I'd never seen from him before. Genuine concern mixed with what looked like shame. "Guadalupe, is this true? You've been living in your car?" I wanted to lie. Wanted to say Blake and Madison were exaggerating or confused or making it up for attention. But I was so tired of lying, of hiding, of pretending everything was fine when it absolutely wasn't. Tired of carrying this secret around like a weight on my chest. "Yeah," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Since sophomore year, after Mom got sick and I had to choose between paying for housing or helping with her medical bills." The room stayed silent. Several of my aunts and uncles looked genuinely shocked. My cousin Tyler looked horrified. Grandma, sitting in her chair by the window, had tears in her eyes. Uncle James closed his eyes briefly, took a deep breath, then looked at me again. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Would it have mattered?" The words came out before I could stop them, raw and honest. "You never asked. You never checked in after Dad left. You just showed up to family dinners once or twice a year and talked about your real estate deals while Mom worked doubles to keep us fed. Why would I think you'd suddenly care now?" He flinched like I'd slapped him. "Guadalupe, it's fine." I cut him off, grabbing my jacket from the back of the chair. "I've managed this long. I'll keep managing." "Thanks for the party, Grandma. Happy birthday." I turned to leave. Couldn't stay in that house another second. The walls felt like they were closing in, everyone's stares burning into my back. But Uncle James called after me. "Lupe, wait!" I stopped, but didn't turn around. My hand was on the doorknob, ready to escape. "Give me your phone number, your real number, not the old one I have saved from when you were a kid." "Why?" I asked, still not turning around. "Because apparently I've been an uncle who didn't notice his own niece was homeless. And I'd like to try changing that if you'll let me." I almost kept walking. Almost told him it was too late, that I didn't need his pity, or his money, or his guilty conscience. But something in his voice stopped me. Something genuine that I'd never heard from him before. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was desperation. Maybe I was just tired of doing everything alone. I gave him my number without looking at him, then walked out into the cold night air. That night, sitting in my car behind the Walmart where I usually parked, trying to get warm enough to sleep, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is Uncle James. Tomorrow, 9 o'clock a.m. Meet me at Denny's on Main Street. We need to talk. And Guadalupe, thank you for giving me a chance to make this right." I stared at that message for a long time, reading it over and over, trying to figure out if this was real, or if he'd wake up tomorrow and forget all about it, if this was just guilt talking, and by morning, he'd be back to his usual distant self. Finally, I typed back, "Okay." Then I curled up in my sleeping bag, set my alarm for 5 o'clock a.m., and tried to sleep. Didn't work. I spent most of the night staring at the ceiling of my car, wondering what tomorrow would bring. The next morning, I showed up at Denny's looking like absolute death. I'd worked the security shift the night before because I couldn't afford to miss it. Gotten maybe 2 hours of sleep in my car after the party, and hadn't had time to shower at Planet Fitness yet. Uncle James was already there, sitting in a corner booth, 2 cups of coffee waiting on the table. "You look terrible," he said as I slid into the seat across from him. "Thanks. You look rich." The words came out harsher than I meant them to, but I was running on fumes and couldn't summon the energy to be polite. He actually smiled at that, small and sad. "Yeah, I do." He pushed one of the coffees toward me. "Drink, then I want you to tell me everything start to finish. Don't leave anything out. I want to understand what I've been too blind to see." So I did. Told him about Mom's cancer diagnosis, the medical bills that kept piling up, the choice between dorms and helping her. Told him about dropping out of housing, the 2 jobs, the Planet Fitness membership, sleeping in my car through 2 Michigan winters. Told him about eating 1 meal a day to save money, about the shame of hiding it from everyone, about the crushing loneliness of going through this alone. He didn't interrupt, just listened with this expression that got more and more pained as I went on. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something I never expected. "I'm sorry." "For what?" "For not being there. For you, for your mom, for any of it. After your dad left, I told myself I was giving your mother space to handle things her way. I told myself she was too proud to accept help, that she'd ask if she needed it. Truth is, I was avoiding the guilt of watching my brother abandon his family while I was too busy building an empire to care about the people he left behind. He met my eyes. That was wrong. And what happened last night with Blake and Madison, that was unforgivable. They're your kids. You don't have to— Yes, I do. They're adults who thought it was funny to mock someone for being in an impossible situation. Adults who knew their cousin was homeless and turned it into entertainment for their friends. That's not how I raised them. Or at least, that's not how I thought I raised them. He shook his head. Clearly, I failed somewhere along the way. He pulled out his phone, typed something, then showed me the screen. A bank transfer confirmation. $25,000 to my account. "What is this?" I asked, my heart racing. My hands started shaking, making the coffee cup rattle against the saucer. "Back pay for 2 years of being homeless, while I lived in comfort and ignored you. While your cousins made fun of you, and I raised them to think that was acceptable. It's not enough, Lupe. It's not nearly enough, but it's a start." "Uncle James, I can't—" "Yes, you can and you will." His voice was firm, but not unkind. "That money is yours, no strings attached, but I'm also offering you something else." He slid a folder across the table. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a lease agreement for a 1-bedroom apartment 3 blocks from campus. "I own the building," he explained. "The apartment's been vacant for a month. First and last month's rent already paid, utilities included. It's yours as long as you're in school, and after graduation, we'll figure something out. I don't want to hear any arguments about it." I stared at the lease, not quite believing it was real. The address, the terms, my name typed at the bottom, waiting for a signature. A real apartment, a real bed, a real shower. The simple things I'd taken for granted before sophomore year and desperately missed every single day since. "Why are you doing this?" My voice cracked. "Because I should have done it 2 years ago. Hell, I should have done it the day your dad left. Because you're family, and I failed you in every way that matters." He paused. And because seeing what my kids have become is a wake-up call I apparently desperately needed. They're spoiled, entitled, and cruel. I did that. I let that happen. But I can start fixing it now. What about Blake and Madison? His expression hardened. They're being cut off effective immediately. No more trust fund access. No more apartment rent paid. No more credit cards. No more car payments. Blake's fake job at my company where he does nothing but golf with clients? Gone. Madison's finding herself tour of Southeast Asia? Over. They want to be independent adults who look down on people actually working hard. Fine. They can figure out how real life works without my money propping them up. I felt a mix of satisfaction and guilt at that. Uncle James, you don't have to punish them on my behalf. I'm not punishing them on your behalf. I'm giving them the education they should have gotten years ago. They need to learn that actions have consequences and that mocking someone in your family for struggling isn't just cruel, it's unacceptable. He leaned back in the booth. Besides, I'd like to actually get to know my niece. The real one, not the one I've been ignoring and failing for 2 decades. That conversation happened 4 months ago. Let me tell you what's happened since. I moved into the apartment Uncle James provided that same week. The first night I slept there, I actually cried. Having a real bed, a shower I could use whenever I wanted, a kitchen where I could cook actual meals instead of eating gas station food, it was life-changing. I stood under the hot water for half an hour, just letting it run over me, washing away 2 years of exhaustion, fear, and cold. I still work the coffee shop job because I need spending money. And honestly, I like the routine, and my coworkers are great. Plus, free coffee doesn't hurt. But I quit the overnight security gig. For the first time in 2 years, I sleep through the night instead of catching 2-hour naps in a car between shifts. My grades have improved now that I'm not constantly exhausted. My professors have noticed, too. One even pulled me aside to tell me how impressed she was by my turnaround. Uncle James and I have dinner once a week now. Sometimes it's at a fancy restaurant he picks, trying to make up for lost time. Sometimes it's the cheap Chinese place near campus that I love because they give massive portions for next to nothing. He asks about my classes, my projects, my plans after graduation. He actually listens. He remembers details. Asks follow-up questions. It's weird, having a real relationship with him, but it's the kind of weird that feels right. The $25,000 he gave me is sitting in a high-yield savings account. I've been using part of it to pay down my student loans aggressively and setting aside the rest for after graduation, for deposits, furniture, maybe even a little breathing room to start my own life properly. Uncle James keeps offering to pay off the loans entirely, but I told him no. Some things I need to do myself. He respected that. Said he understood. As for Blake and Madison, the fallout hit them like a freight train. Uncle James cut them off exactly as he said he would. Blake's living in a tiny studio apartment now, in a rough part of town, the kind of neighborhood Mom and I used to live in. He's working retail for the first time in his life. Minimum wage, no health insurance, getting yelled at by managers and customers every day. He called me last month, voice desperate, asking for budgeting advice. I told him to get a $10 Planet Fitness membership, worth it for the showers, and somewhere safe to go when it's cold. Told him ramen is cheap, but to add vegetables or he'll get sick. Told him thrift stores have decent work clothes if you know where to look. He didn't find it funny. He just sighed and said, "I don't know how you did this." I told him I didn't have a choice. Madison ran out of money in Bali and had to call home, begging for a plane ticket after her credit cards got declined. She's back living with Uncle James and Aunt Patricia now, working as a server at a chain restaurant. She complains constantly, but Uncle James made her promise to save 6 months of rent before he'll even consider helping her get her own place again. Last I heard, she's 3 months in and hating every minute. She posted on Instagram about learning humility and discovering herself through struggle. The comments section dragged her to filth. Someone wrote, "Maybe you should have learned humility before mocking your homeless cousin," and it got hundreds of likes. She deleted the post an hour later. Both of them tried to apologize. Blake sent this long text about how he didn't realize how hurtful his words were, how sorry he was, how he hoped we could rebuild because family matters. Madison called a few times, leaving teary voicemails about how she'd grown, how she was changing, how she wanted us to be close again. I deleted them both. Uncle James asked if I wanted a family dinner, a chance for them to apologize properly. I said maybe someday, but not yet. Right now, I'm focused on finishing my degree, keeping my GPA up, and preparing for the future. He didn't push, he just nodded and said, "Fair enough." Speaking of the future, I've already got 3 job prospects lined up after graduation, all at major engineering firms, all offering salaries that would have seemed impossible 2 years ago when I was sleeping in a Walmart parking lot. Turns out working 2 jobs while maintaining a 3.7 GPA looks really good to employers. One interviewer even asked about the gap in housing on my background form. I told the truth, expected judgment, maybe awkward sympathy. Instead, the recruiter looked impressed, asked follow-up questions about how I managed stress, how I stayed organized, how I kept my grades up. 2 weeks later, I got the offer letter. Starting salary, $73,000 plus benefits. I sat on my apartment floor and cried. Not because of the number, though, yeah, it felt surreal, but because for the first time in years, I wasn't scared about what tomorrow might bring. Mom's in remission now. The cancer's gone. She's back to working full-time at the care facility. Uncle James set her up with a financial advisor to help manage the leftover medical debt and promised to cover her co-pays and deductibles for the next 5 years of follow-up care. When he told her, she broke down crying in his kitchen. They've been talking more too, working through decades of silence and resentment. Turns out holding grudges doesn't help anyone. Mom told me she's proud of me, not for the grades or the job offers, but for surviving, for not giving up when everything felt impossible. She said she wished she'd known how bad things were so she could have helped. I told her she did help by teaching me to keep going even when life sucks. We both cried. Grandma told me she's proud too. Said she always knew I was tough, but she hadn't realized how tough. We have lunch every other week now at her favorite diner. She tells me stories about growing up during the Depression, about making do with nothing, about the difference between being poor and being broke. Somehow, those stories make me feel less alone in what I went through. Sometimes I drive past the Walmart parking lot, the same spot under the crooked light post where I used to park at night, the one that hid me just enough from security cameras. It feels like a lifetime ago. I don't miss it, not even a little. But I don't regret it either, because it taught me things I wouldn't have learned any other way. How strong I am, how resourceful I can be, how survival isn't shameful. Uncle James is throwing me a graduation party in 2 months, a real celebration, not some family obligation thing where everyone pretends to care. He asked if I wanted to invite Blake and Madison. I said no. He just nodded and said, "Understood." Then he asked if I preferred Italian or Mexican food for the party. This whole experience has taught me something important. Sometimes the people who should help you won't, and sometimes the people you least expect will step up and change everything. Uncle James didn't just flip the script on my cousins. He flipped it on himself. He looked at the man he'd become, the father who raised entitled kids, and the uncle who ignored a struggling niece, and he decided to be better. That's rare. That's growth. As for Blake and Madison, maybe they'll learn from this. Maybe they won't. Either way, it's not my problem anymore. They mocked me for living in my car. Now they're learning what it feels like to live without a safety net. And me? I'm finally free. Graduation day came faster than I expected. I stood there in my cap and gown, the sun beating down on the stadium, a sea of proud families and teary-eyed students surrounding me. When my name was called, Guadalupe Martinez, Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering, I walked across that stage with my head high. I didn't even realize I was crying until the applause blurred into noise. After the ceremony, I found Mom in the crowd, standing next to Uncle James and Grandma. Mom was crying openly, clutching a bouquet of flowers so tightly her knuckles were white. Uncle James looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time, not as the niece he failed, but as the woman who'd survived everything life threw at her and still made it out stronger. When I hugged him, he whispered, "You earned every bit of this, Lupe. Don't ever forget that." Later that evening, we had the party he'd promised. It wasn't one of his over-the-top mansion events. It was smaller, real. String lights in the backyard, good food, laughter that didn't sound forced. For once, everyone there actually belonged. Mom danced with Grandma to old Spanish music from the 70s. Uncle James grilled steak while I helped set out plates. He kept telling everyone about my job offer, bragging like a proud dad. It was strange but sweet, and I didn't stop him. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like an outsider in my own family. At one point during dinner, Uncle James stepped aside to take a phone call. When he came back, he looked thoughtful. "That was Madison," he said quietly. "She wanted to congratulate you." I didn't say anything. She also said she's been working full-time for 6 months, finally saved enough for her own apartment. She's different now. He hesitated. Blake's working too, retail management. Says it's the hardest thing he's ever done. He's not bitter anymore, just humbled. I nodded slowly. Good for them, I said, and I meant it. Because forgiveness doesn't always look like reconciliation. Sometimes it's just letting go of the weight. After everyone left that night, Uncle James and I sat out on the porch together, watching the lights flicker in the distance. He handed me a small envelope. "What's this?" I asked. "Graduation present." Inside was a key. "It's for the car parked in your spot," he said with a small smile. "It's not brand new, but it's reliable. You've spent enough time sleeping in one. Figured you deserve one you can actually live with instead of in." I laughed so hard I started crying again. He smiled, a little misty-eyed himself. "You've changed all of us, Lupe. I didn't just give you money or a place to stay. You gave me a mirror I couldn't ignore." I didn't know what to say, so I just reached out and squeezed his hand. That night, after everyone went home, I stood alone on the balcony of my apartment, looking out at the quiet street below. The same city where I once slept behind a Walmart now stretched before me, familiar yet completely new. I thought about the girl who used to shiver in the driver's seat, watching the frost creep across her windshield, whispering to herself to keep going. And I realized something. That girl didn't disappear. She became me, stronger, smarter, softer too in the ways that mattered. The next morning, I drove my new car to the beach, windows down, music blasting, hair whipping around my face. I parked by the water, leaned against the hood, and let the wind carry everything away. The anger, the shame, the exhaustion. I wasn't running anymore. I was arriving. So yeah, Reddit. My name's Guadalupe. I lived in my car for 2 years while working 2 jobs and going to school full-time. My cousins mocked me. My family failed me. My uncle redeemed himself, and I survived. If you ever find yourself where I was, cold, tired, convinced nobody sees you, remember this. Your worth isn't determined by who abandoned you. It's proven by the fact that you kept going anyway. Because sometimes life doesn't hand you miracles. It hands you hell. And you climb your way out, blistered, bruised, but still breathing. That's your miracle. And now, I'm living mine. It's been a year since graduation. My life doesn't look like a movie, but it's mine. And that's enough. I wake up in my apartment. Sunlight spilling through real curtains, not car windows. I brew coffee in an actual kitchen, not in a gas station thermos. I drive my own car, not to survive, but to live. Some mornings, I still catch myself instinctively checking the back seat, half expecting to see the sleeping bag that used to be my bed. Then I smile and shake my head, grateful for how far I've come. Work is good, really good. I landed that engineering job I mentioned, the one with the $73,000 starting salary. I've already earned a raise and I'm managing my first small project. My boss says I'm reliable, resourceful, and unflappable under pressure. I just laugh to myself because honestly, if you can debug code while shivering in a car at 2 a.m., you can handle just about anything. Uncle James and I still meet for dinner every other week. Sometimes we talk business, sometimes life. He's calmer now, humbler. He says cutting Blake and Madison off was the hardest thing he ever did, but also the best. They're both doing better too. Blake's still in retail management, saving to start his own small logistics business. Madison just got promoted at her restaurant and is taking community college classes in marketing. They both send the occasional text, not for money or forgiveness, just to check in. And that I can live with. Mom is thriving. She paid off nearly all her medical debt, and Uncle James helped her refinance her mortgage so she could finally breathe again. Every Sunday, we cook together. Her recipes, not mine. The kind of food that makes the house smell like warmth. She laughs more these days. She says she sees herself in me. The stubbornness, the grit. It's the best compliment I've ever gotten. And Grandma, she's still sharp as ever. We still go to that little diner every other week. She orders her usual, scrambled eggs and black coffee, and she always says the same thing before we leave. Don't forget where you came from, but don't live there either. I carry that with me everywhere I go. As for me, I've started saving, not just for the future, but for others. There's a scholarship fund now under my name and Uncle James's. It's small, but it helps students who are working through college and struggling to afford housing. Every semester, one student gets a grant big enough to cover rent for 6 months. The first time I handed the award letter to a girl who'd been sleeping in her car just like I had to step outside to cry. Full circle. Sometimes, late at night, I still drive by the Walmart parking lot. I pull over in that same spot where I used to park, roll down the window, and sit for a minute. The air smells the same, faintly metallic, faintly alive. I whisper a quiet thank you. Not to the pain, but to the version of me who endured it, the one who refused to quit. If you'd told that girl back then that her uncle would step up, that her cousins would change, that she'd build a whole life from the ashes, she wouldn't have believed you. But she would have wanted to. And that's what I leave you with, Reddit. If you're in the dark, hold on. You have no idea what tomorrow can bring. The people who broke you may never fix it, but sometimes life finds another way to heal you. My name is Guadalupe. I lived in my car for 2 years. Now I'm building homes for other people. And every time I hand someone a key, I remember the first night I held one again. The one Uncle James gave me. The one that meant I wasn't homeless anymore. It wasn't just a key to a door, it was the key to my new life. And that door, I'm never closing it.